Welcome to the Sellin' Podcast with Jeffrey Greif. Jeffrey has spent more than 45 years in sales and marketing, and for more than 25 years, he's presented sales seminars from large corporations to small businesses, as well as teaching university students all about the pride and passion of sales. Now, he's sharing that knowledge and practical advice with you to fast-track your journey to sales success. Whether you're selling a product, a service, or ideas, this is the Sellin' Podcast. And now your host, Jeffrey Greif.
Now, one of the things that I really love about listening to podcasts, it's education and entertainment for your ears while your eyes are busy. Now on to this episode of the Sellin' Podcast. Do you want to learn one of the most important strategies for success in sales, business, and in life? Of course you do. That's why you listen to the Sellin' Podcast. I would like to address a very important aspect of sales, a critical issue that is rarely ever discussed. Heck, I'll say it's never discussed. And that is a strategy to manage rejection and disappointment in sales, business, and let's face it, in life. It sounds like a bummer, I know, but it really isn't. Quite the contrary. Let me explain. Rejection and disappointment in sales. I admit it is an uncomfortable discussion. I know, believe me. When anyone gets a job in sales, your sales manager is not going to say, "Hey, congratulations. Here's 1,000 business cards. Go get them." Oh, one more thing. You are going to be facing a tremendous amount of failure and rejection. Good luck. A business owner is never, ever going to say to you, "Hey, welcome aboard. Congratulations. Welcome to the team. You're going to be facing a tremendous amount of failure and rejection. Welcome to the team." No. Business owners, sales managers, they never mention it. Why? I assume it's because they don't want to scare the out of you. And also, probably they don't want to face their own fears either. Yes, I understand. It is an uncomfortable discussion, but it is a necessary discussion. Why? Because as salespeople, we face constant rejection. And believe me, I have seen so many salespeople over the years burn out. They become alcoholics, drug addicts. They become tired and defeated. Burnouts. Why? Because they just couldn't handle the stress. That's why. They never developed the tools to manage rejection and disappointment. The tools that we will be discussing today. It is crucial to discuss and understand. If you want success in sales and in this life, you are going to experience rejection and disappointment. It's just a fact of life, and certainly a fact in sales. When you have a goal, the world doesn't line up to help you to achieve the goal. People aren't going to go out of their way to get in touch with you and say, "Hey, I understand you have a goal to achieve. That's great. Isn't that wonderful? How can I help you?" No. Life just isn't like that. Now, we all have adversity in our lives, all of us. We all face rejection and failure, and unfortunately, we all experience abuse and humiliation at some times in our life, especially salespeople. Yes, we have got to deal with rejection and disappointment. But how? How do we face rejection and disappointment so it doesn't destroy us? How do we use our intellect to have these difficulties that we face as salespeople? How do we use our minds to have these difficulties support us in some way? How do we change our thinking so that the events and circumstances in our lives serve us instead of destroy us? The answer? Well, the single most important strategy that I have learned to address rejection and disappointment in sales, business, and in life is a strategy called reframing. Reframing. Reframing is a skill that you can develop to reframe your thoughts about negative events and circumstances so that your perception of those events and circumstances serve you rather than destroy you. The best book I ever read about reframing was written by Scott Adams called Reframe Your Brain. It's great. You gotta read this book, Reframe Your Brain. I will include a link in the Sell-In Podcast show notes for this episode so you can conveniently purchase this book. Buy it, read it, and live a better life. How's that for an endorsement? Pretty good. You got to read this book. In psychotherapy, the term for reframing is called cognitive reappraisal, which means reframing an event to change its emotional impact. In this episode of the Sell-In Podcast, we'll simply call the strategy reframing, the art of the reframe. Here are some general thoughts about reframing in no particular order. For salespeople, this is so important. The perspective reframe. Reframing is a shift in your perspective. Sales success depends less on what actually happens to you and more about your interpretation of the event or circumstances. For example, I used to see problems in my sales career as unfair, a roadblock. Now, by reframing, I see them as a challenge. Just by changing my thinking, I turn obstacles into opportunities. Pretty cool, yes? That's a reframe. I took what I once perceived as a problem and I changed my perspective about it. Now I see challenges not as problems, not as roadblocks, but as opportunities. The rejection reframe. See rejection as redirection. Getting a no isn't personal. It's data that I can use for future success. Rejection informs me as to what my next steps are towards success. Remember I told you in a prior episode of the Sell-In Podcast that I used to believe that hearing a no from a prospect during a sales presentation was rejection, that they were rejecting me as a human being. That's how I felt when I first started in sales. And then at some point, I learned that in order for me to sell, I had to hear the word no in order to learn what was important to the prospect. That information is crucial for learning how to sell to the client or to the prospect. Now, I don't take rejection as personal. I don't take the rejection as personal. No, I see it as the only way to learn, shift strategy, and sell. Now, when I hear the word no during a prospecting sales call, a presentation to a prospect, I realize that the word no is an opportunity for me to ask more questions and to learn more. I kind of like it. When a prospect refuses to meet with me, I used to think that they were rejecting me as a human being, that they were being rude to me. Today, I reframe this to think that, well, they are just busy. We're all busy, right? I need to be considerate and realize that they are just busy. I'll get back to them another time. Same consideration for when a prospect rejects my proposal to do business with them. I used to feel badly about that. I used to think that I had failed the sales presentation, that I was a failure in sales. I don't feel badly about it anymore. Now, I think to myself that I am responsible for learning more about the prospect's business. And I realize that I just have not given the prospect a good enough reason for them to buy. I just have to learn more about them and their business and approach them at another time in the future. That's a reframe. I no longer see rejection as a problem. I now see rejection as an opportunity. The time perspective reframe. Disappointment? I used to think that disappointment in sales meant I was failing. Now, I focus on the future. the long-term perspective. I focus on my long-term goals and I ask myself, sure, I'm disappointed right now, but will I even remember this in 10 years? No way. Will I even remember this in 10 months or 1 month? Probably not. And I get on to the next sales call. That's a reframe, putting the disappointment into perspective by thinking long-term perspective. The taking action reframe. This is one of my favorite. You've heard me talk about this in the past episodes of the Selling Podcast. When I interpret an event as a negative event, I give myself some time to feel bad about it, usually 10 minutes. And then after the time allotted, I start thinking about what actions I can take. I get motivated and I act. When I lose a sale, I used to feel really depressed about it. Now, I give myself 10 minutes to feel bad about it, and then I think, what actions can I take right now and in the future? How do I get motivated here? Where do I act? What do I do? That's a reframe. What actions can I take? You can't be depressed when you are taking positive, calculated, goal-oriented action. No way! That's a reframe. I get motivated and I take action. The pressure to purpose reframe. Instead of thinking to yourself, quote, I need this sale, end quote, which causes anxiety, think, quote, I get to help this person, end quote, right? Instead of I need this sale, think, I get to help someone. I get to help this person. The shift in thought from transactional to intentional. Remember Zig Ziglar said, you can get just about anything you want out of this life if you just help enough other people get what they want out of this life. That's beautiful, isn't it? That's a reframe. Change your perspective from feeling pressure, from feeling anxiety, to feelings of purpose, intention, serving others. You're helping people. That's a reframe. The control reframe. You can't control the decisions of other people. We just can't. We'd like to. We'd like to control the decisions of other people, but we know we cannot control the decisions of other people. You can influence their decisions, but you cannot control their decisions. There are just too many variables. Reframing reminds us that while we aren't in control of every variable in business, sales, and in life, we are in control of our own thoughts, emotions, and actions. This is the control reframe. Regardless of the outcome, think to yourself, what actions can I take? What actions will I take? What actions will I not take? See, your words and thoughts control your emotions, and your emotions control your own actions. That's a reframe. Much better to realize what we are in control of than it is to be frustrated about that which we cannot control. And we cannot control all of the variables involved with the decisions of others. We just can't. That's the control reframe. What actions can I take? The reframing fear reframe. The F word. The F word, fear. This reframe is so important, especially in sales. The reframing fear. The reframing fear reframe. Sometimes when we are making a sales call or walking into a networking event or some sales presentation that we're making, sometimes our emotions drift towards feeling fear and anxiety. It's okay. We're human. Feel the feelings. Feel the feelings. You don't want to suppress the emotion. It's okay. We're human. You're making a sales call, you're attending a networking event, and sometimes our emotions drift towards feeling fear and anxiety. Feel the feelings. The most important recommendation I have for you is this. When you start to feel fear and anxiety, say to yourself, I feel excited. I feel excited. Now, let me tell you, when you feel fear and you tell yourself you feel excited, Some of you will feel excited immediately and continue to feel this way for the rest of your sales career. Good for you. However, many of you will, when you feel fear and anxiety and you tell yourself that you are excited, many of you still will feel the fear. It's okay. I promise. Every time you feel fear and anxiety, tell yourself you are excited. It may not happen the first time or the 5th time or even the 10th or 20th time, but I promise you, keep reframing fear and anxiety as excitement, and soon enough, you won't feel the fear that much anymore. You will always feel excited about sales. Reframing isn't a one-time thing. It's a continuous discipline. The more and more you practice it, the better and better you get at it. Tony Robbins tells this story. Excuse me. Tony Robbins tells this story of meeting with Bruce Springsteen and Carly Simon on 2 separate occasions. During his conversations with them, he made a very interesting observation. I love this. Robbins said that during his conversation with Carly Simon, she said that before going on stage, she felt her heart pounding in her chest. She felt her heart rate increase. She heard the crowd chanting louder and louder and louder, and she became paralyzed with fear. She had stage fright. Robbins said that during his conversation with Bruce Springsteen, Springsteen at some point said that before he goes on stage, he feels his heart pounding in his chest. He feels his heart rate increase. He hears the crowd chanting louder and louder and louder, and he feels excited. See, they both interpreted the same circumstances and the same physiology in 2 different ways. You can do this. Reframe your circumstances and physiology to serve you. That's reframing. When you feel fear, tell yourself you feel excited. You are programming your brain for success. The energy reframe. When I've had a long day, up early in the morning, putting in a full day of sales calls, and I am about to attend an evening networking event, I'll be on my feet for the next 3 or 4 hours, working the room, networking. At first, I very often think about how tired I am, but then I reframe. Instead of thinking of how tired I am, I start thinking about how I am so looking forward to meeting all of the people I am about to meet. I think about the opportunities I'll be presented with during the evening's event, and I think about how excited I am to be a professional salesperson. I set my shoulders back, I stand tall, take a few deep breaths, I focus on the excitement, the energy, and I feel unstoppable. I walk into that room with excitement and energy. Here I am, everybody. That's a reframe. Instead of feeling tired, I shift my focus. I use my physiology, breathe, and I get excited. Energy. The growth reframe. Every difficult situation is a training session. That's the growth reframe. Think that every difficult situation is a training session. Think to yourself, what can I learn from this? Or, how is this making me stronger? Or, how is this making me a better salesperson? That's a reframe, from difficulty to learning and growing. From a difficult situation, thinking about, what am I learning here? How am I growing? How am I getting stronger? The curiosity reframe, very important. When reframing rejection, try to be curious. Hey, when feeling bored for that matter, get curious instead. Curiosity is much more effective than being a victim. That's a reframe. Don't think about the rejection, the disappointment. Think about, what can I be curious about here? What are the questions that I can ask myself here? What are the questions I can ask others about here? What is interesting in this situation? That's the curiosity reframe. How can I be curious here? The abundance reframe. When feeling down about business, try to think about, how there's always another person to contact. There's always another follow-up call in the future. There's always another networking event to attend. There's always more people to meet. There's always more referrals out there. There's always another conversation to be had, another prospect, another chance. More opportunities to be creative. More opportunities to create. Always more to learn. How can I be creative here? Who can I meet? Who can I help? Who will I meet? There's always tomorrow. Think abundance. Think abundance. Don't think, holy, how the am I going to make enough sales to pay my bills? No. Don't think that. Think instead, I love a challenge. What am I made of? How can I make this work? Who is my next client? Where is the abundance here? Where is the next opportunity? That's a reframe. Where is the abundance to be found? The opportunity. What actions can I take? Too many people think about their limitations, what they don't have and never will. Scarcity thinking shrinks opportunities. Abundance thinking expands opportunities. The appreciation reframe. When you are feeling challenged, depressed, take a moment and think about everything you are grateful for in your life. Could be your health, your loved ones, your employment. Proud to be a professional salesperson. What are you appreciative of in your life, business and personal? Sometimes we get caught up in what we are lacking in our lives. And I get it. I also fall into that trap from time to time. I do. Then I remind myself of what I am grateful for in my life. This helps me to appreciate my life, appreciate the present moment. And it helps me to make better decisions and take more appropriate action, the appreciation reframe. Here's a good example. When I am faced with challenges at my office, I think about how grateful I am to work at this company. When I'm faced with rejection from prospects, I think about how proud I am to be a professional salesperson. All of it, the successes and the challenges. That's a reframe. What can I be appreciative of in this situation? What can I be appreciative of in my business? What can I appreciate here? What am I appreciative in my life? What am I grateful for? At the very least, this reframe helps you to put your life in perspective. It's beautiful. What am I appreciative of in my business and in my life? What do I appreciate here? What am I grateful for? The words reframe. Remember, the words we use are so powerful. Not only the words that we say to others, but also the words that we say to ourselves. You see, words frame our reality. Here are a couple of examples of how I have reframed the words that I use when talking to others and to myself. When my industry encounters the occasional downturn, which it does, I used to say to myself, and anyone else who cared to listen, I used to say, this industry is in a depression. Was it really in a depression? No. I was just exaggerating the pain. Now I say, business was so good for so long, I can't complain. Or I say, this downturn, it's an opportunity for me to gain market share in my industry and wipe out my competition. Love it. I used to say to myself, this is just another good example. I used to say to myself, my sales manager is killing my business with their sales manager sales meetings. Are they really killing my business? No. I was just exaggerating the pain. Now I say to myself, I am employed by the very best company in my industry, and I am. And I am so proud to work here. We give the very best service to our clients. And while I'm not crazy about sales managers' sales meetings, I do my best to learn what I can during the sales meetings. And I also do my very best to try to convince my sales managers to limit the amount of time that we spend having our sales meetings. I don't want to be sitting in a meeting talking about selling. I want to get out there and sell. Now, do these reframes make me feel happy? No. When the industry that I am in is in a downturn, these reframes don't necessarily make me feel happy. No. Do these reframes make me feel enthusiastic about attending the sales manager's sales meetings? Absolutely not. However, these reframes do help me to feel much better than the hell realm I used to live in when encountering these events. And most importantly, by reframing, I help myself to be more creative and to take more control over these events. I like that. More control. Feeling a little bit better and taking more control. I like. Here's another example of what I hear some salespeople say. Quote, I have to make more sales calls. End quote. I have to make more sales calls? Don't put it that way. It's a drag. You don't have to do anything. Instead of saying, I have to make more sales calls, what I say to myself is, I look forward to meeting more people, learning more about their business, being creative, working with them, and, oh yeah, making more money. Yes, that's a reframe. Using words to motivate myself for appropriate action, being resourceful, attentive, and strategic. Remember, the words you use do affect your emotions, and your emotions control your actions. Okay, let's get to it. Let's reframe together. Yes, right now, my brothers and sisters on the path to success in sales, yes, let's reframe right now together. If you're driving to your next sales call, please pull over for a minute. Don't drive. Please don't do this while you're driving. Take out a pad and a pen. I'll wait. Do you have a pad and a pen? Good. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath, and think about a challenge you are having or have had that makes you feel what you perceive to be negative emotions. Whatever those emotions may be, anger, sadness, regret, fear, anxiety, whatever you feel, it's okay to feel it. It's okay to feel the emotions. You do not want to suppress these emotions. Feel them. I know that this can sometimes be difficult. It's okay. Feel the feelings. You're human. Please remember to take deep breaths through this exercise. Okay, you have the event, the circumstances, and the negative emotion? Good. Now write it down on the pad. Write it down. Write down the event, the circumstances, and how you feel about them, the negative emotion. Could be anything, personal or business. Could be important or not so important. For the sake of this exercise, it could be anything, any event or circumstance that you feel negative emotions about. What is it that you find disturbing about it? Write it down. How does it make you feel? Whatever the emotion is that you associate to this event or circumstance, write it down. Now, take a little time. Take a moment to think about a different way to think about this particular situation or circumstance. Take a little time. Try to think a little differently about it. Even though you associate negative emotions with the situation, what is a different way, or even a slightly different way, to feel about this event or circumstance? What is something positive that you may interpret from this event? What is a different way to think about this, where it serves you, perhaps motivates you? Instead of hurting, causing angst and conflict, destroying relationships, creating negative energy, try to reinterpret the event. See it in a different way. What did you learn? Where were you strong? Where were you weak, but learned how to be strong for the future? How did you create healthier boundaries? Did you take calculated risks? Did you grow, learn? Did you gain a different perspective on life or business? How did you grow stronger? If you can't think of anything, think how might it have helped you in some way? How might this have helped you in some way? What did you learn? What did you learn from this? If you think you couldn't learn anything, think what could you learn from this? How might you feel differently about this? What are some other ways to perceive this situation so that it serves you instead of destroys you? I'm thinking of a really great example, a very powerful example of this reframing. I'm thinking about the MADD, MADD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Started by mothers many years ago who lost their children in car accidents due to drunk drivers. Can you think of anything more devastating, losing a child to a drunk driver? These women grieved their loss, and then they reframed the events and circumstances. How? Well, they grieved their loss, and then they had the strength to create an organization called MADD to educate the world about the dangers of drunk driving. Advocacy, improved detection, and DWI reform and DUI reform. They influenced Mothers Against Drunk Driving, influenced legislation, saving perhaps hundreds of thousands of lives, perhaps even saving millions of lives in the process. I can't think of a more powerful reframe, can you? Let me share this with you. As crazy as this sounds, many of you may not be aware of this. When I was a boy, I remember this. The courts actually showed leniency to drunk drivers because they were impaired by their drinking. Crazy, but true. Yes, the courts many years ago, and I remember this, the courts were more lenient towards drunk drivers. Today, 50 years later, if you're caught drunk driving, you have your license revoked or you go to jail. Mothers Against Drunk Driving has made a tremendous impact, educating and saving millions of lives. That's a reframe. They took their own pain, their own personal tragedy, and they used it to motivate themselves to take positive action and save millions of lives. If the people of Mothers Against Drunk Driving can reframe, then yes, you can also reframe your thoughts to serve you instead of destroy you. Since we are reframing together, I will as well. What challenge am I having or have had in the past that I associate negative emotions to? Let me think. What do I need to reframe? Well, here's one. My state manager has been promoted, and I'll be having a new state manager soon. I'll be reporting to someone else soon. I'm feeling some anxiety about this. Why? Well, I think it's obvious, but I'll say it anyway, because who knows what type of a manager they will be. Will they be competent? Will our goals align? Will they be interested like I am in building our market share? Will they be interested like I am in providing even better service to our clients? Will they be interested in investing in the future, being creative, future-oriented as I am? Or will they want to play it safe? Also, I don't make the decision here. So I lack control, which causes me some anxiety. I'm feeling anxiety about the future. Here's the reframe. Do I completely lack control? No, of course not. I've already spoken to the regional manager and advised them as to what is important to me when choosing a successor to the state manager. Also, I made a recommendation as to who I'd like to see fill that position. I don't know if they will choose that person, but at least I'm having some influence, so I do have some control. I may not be making the decision, but I do have some influence over the decision. Also, I get to thinking, I've had 5 state managers over the past 35 years. I'm going to continue to be just as successful as I ever have been, regardless of who is my manager, right? There will be likes and dislikes. There always is. And it's okay. Change is always challenging. This is no different. I'm going to be just fine. I'm going to thrive regardless of who is my next state manager. Reframing. See, I feel better already. Reframing is just a different way to see sales, business, life. It's a different way to see events and circumstances. Bob Dylan wrote in the song Tangled Up in Blue, "We just see it from a different point of view." Yes, reframing is just seeing the same set of circumstances from a different point of view, a different perspective. That's all it is. Is reframing lying to ourselves? No, it's not really. It's just seeing events or feelings in different ways of thinking about them, thinking different ways about events, thinking different ways about our feelings about them. For example, here's a really good example. I used to see drinking alcoholic beverages as sophisticated, fun, relaxing. I used to see it as a status. I used to like to drink expensive scotch, status, significance. I used to see it as bonding with friends, family, connecting with clients, developing rapport. I don't see drinking alcoholic beverages that way anymore. Now, I see drinking alcoholic beverages as drinking poison. Since I stopped drinking about 10 years ago, I've lost more than 15 pounds of fat bloat. I get up almost every morning and I exercise. I've read more books in the past 10 years than I did in the prior 25 years. I've increased my business opportunities, expanded my sales territory threefold. I have much more energy to attend early morning and late into the evening networking events. I have even more energy to provide more attentive service to my clients, my prospective clients, my industry. And I gotta say, my relationships are better than ever with family, my beautiful bride, my friends, and most importantly, my relationship with myself is better. Did I lie to myself by reframing? Maybe, but who cares? I framed my own personal opinion about drinking so that it serves me. And by the way, I never proselytize when it comes to drinking. I'm not telling you to stop drinking. I'm only using this as an example of how reframing improved my life. The decisions that you make about your life are your own, of course. Here's another example of a reframe that comes to mind. I used to find walking in the rain uncomfortable, especially when I'm making sales calls and I'm wearing a suit. I used to see walking in the rain as uncomfortable. Then I read the book Staring into the Sun by Irvin Yalom about the psychology of death. It's a really interesting read. I highly recommend it. In that book, he discusses how when we walk in the rain, we find it annoying, something we'd rather not do. But then he writes, think about yourself lying on your deathbed. You're lying in bed, taking your last breaths. Wouldn't you give just about anything in the world to walk in the rain just one last time? I thought that was very powerful. Now, when I walk in the rain, I find it refreshing. I appreciate the present moment. Sometimes I take off my hat and I feel the raindrops bouncing off of my bald head. Sometimes I try to catch the raindrops in my tongue like I was 10 years old again. Now I see walking in the rain as refreshing and fun. That's a reframe, my brothers and sisters on the path to success in sales. That's a reframe. I will leave you with these famous quotes that I have pinned to the wall of my office. These famous quotes have helped me so much to reframe my thoughts, my feelings, and my opinions so that I can make better decisions and take more effective action in my sales career, in my business, and in my life. Brian Tracy, quote, "When you look back on any achievement, you will find that it was preceded by many difficulties along the way, many trials, many lessons. They are all the price that you pay for success. No success is possible without them," end quote. I just love that quote. Tony Robbins, quote, "The quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of discomfort and uncertainty that you can live with," end quote. And Albert Einstein wrote, quote, "Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one," end quote. It's a great quote. Einstein's talking about reframing here. William Shakespeare wrote in Hamlet, quote, "There is nothing either good nor bad, but thinking makes it so," end quote. Shakespeare's talking about reframing. And Epictetus wrote, yes, Epictetus, this isn't new stuff, folks. Epictetus wrote this in 100 AD, quote, "Circumstances do not define the man. They reveal him to himself," end quote. Reframe your thoughts about events and circumstances, especially those events and circumstances that you perceive to be negative events and challenging circumstances. Reframe your perspective about events and circumstances so that your thoughts, emotions, and opinions about those events and circumstances serve you rather than destroy you. Reframe your perspective about events and circumstances so you are motivated to focus, make better decisions, create positive energy, and take action directed towards success in sales, business, and in life. Now get out there and sell.
We hope you found this episode of the Sellin' Podcast helpful and of interest. Please make sure to like, rate, and review. And mention this podcast to a friend or a business associate. Have a comment about this podcast? Have a topic you'd like Jeffrey to discuss? Feel free to contact Jeffrey directly at jeffrey@sellin.net. He'll read and review every one of your emails. That's jeffrey@sellin.net. .net as in networking for success in sales. Now, take what you've learned today and get out there and sell. See you next time on the Sellin' Podcast.